Hello there, Liam from Unique Cars and Parts, and I'm with Neil Joyner from the Trafalgar Holden Motor Museum. Neil's been showing me some absolutely wonderful models. We're not going to get through them today, but it's been fantastic. But as he was showing me through, he brought me to one car that and on face value you'd say, what's this doing in a Holden museum? And this is a Lloyd micro car, and it took my fancy, and I had to ask Neil some more about it. Neil, perhaps you could share the story.
Well, Lloyd-Hartnett was CEO of Holden back from the 30s, probably mid-30s. And after the war, him and Ben Chifley were sort of talking a lot about Australia developing its own manufacturing base.
For those that don't know, Ben Chifley was the Australian PM.
Sorry, Ben Chifley was Australia's PM. And as we know, 1948, the FX came out, or the 48215. Sometime before that, Lloyd-Hartnett had a bit of a disagreement with General Motors, and they wanted to get him back to America to straighten his head out, as they called it, and he refused to go, so they sacked him.
Was Hartnett an American?
No, he was actually an Englishman. He came to Australia from Vauxhall. He'd been pretty much head of the Vauxhall division, and he came over here. And when he was dismissed from General Motors, he designed and built his own motor car, and for a whole lot of reasons it didn't work. And a few years later he started importing Lloyds, and these went through a modification that he'd done. The back end of them was changed, one thing led to another, and he released them as a Lloyd-Hartnett.
That would be a very limited production run, and that would make this thing, I would think, terribly rare and unique.
Well, it's a 570cc motor under there, air-cooled. You would wonder what sort of a future it would have in Australia anyway. But they claimed they were getting 60 mile to the gallon, and they claimed that they would do 55 mile an hour. Well, you'd have a fairly good incline, I reckon, to get it up to 55. But they did sell quite a few, and this is around 57, 58.
Okay, so that would probably put it in the realms of being a competitor to the Lightburn Zeta.
Yeah, that would be about the market. Yeah, but he did that for a while, and as I say, I think they were doomed from the start in Australia, with just being what they were. But
well, I think all micro cars in Australia were somewhat doomed. Now, this thing you said had a 550cc air
570 or 580cc air-cooled.
Do you know how much horsepower or kilowatts that?
No, I would have no idea.
Not many.
No, nowhere near enough for me, I can tell you.
And transmission-wise, what are we looking at?
Manual, 3-speed manual.
Synchro on first?
I would very much doubt it.
And drum brakes all round?
Drum brakes all round.
And I'm assuming vacuum-powered wipers like the 48215?
Most likely, yes. I think it's quite a horrible looking bit of work all round, but it's a fascinating part of history. So
it is, and look, I'll take some better photos of it so you can see. But one thing that stands out is this thing's got suicide doors.
Absolutely, there's not something else against it. It gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
Well, it would be a bit of a feature on a car these days to have suicide doors, but it looks good. Now, it appears to me that it's got seating for two at the front, and you could get some small children in the back.
Very small children in the back, yes. You'd really have to be a contortionist to get in there to start off with. So.
And without even climbing in the back, where I don't think I'd be able to get in the back, I think the two of us would struggle. I think the suspension on the back of this thing would struggle. But just looking at it, it looks like it's almost made from cardboard, that back seat. It looks incredibly uncomfortable and very uninviting.
Everything about it is very cheap, I can assure you. So.
Yes, very cheap. So obviously it was front engined.
Yes, that's correct.
Driving the rear wheels?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know how many they imported?
I don't really know, but I would say 500 or 600 would probably pull it up.
Yeah, probably too many, but it makes it very rare these days. And then, you know, aficionados of the microcar, of which there are plenty, would say not enough. So this Lloyd were from Czechoslovakia?
Germany, I believe.
A German car, okay.
Yeah, I think they were of German origin. In fact, the motor in there, I believe, was either a Bradford or a Bradford copy. And the Bradfords in Australia, the only note that I make of them is that they used to power the fruit carts that used to get around the markets. Those little three-wheeled fruit carts, you'd sit on them and the front would steer with one wheel. You know, had a pivot behind the seat, and they would have a tray for carrying fruit and veggies around with. But I believe that's where the design came from.
Probably good for a fruit cart, but not so good for an automobile out on the highway.
Not for four of us like us boring down the road, no.
Well, what a sight that'd be. Well, Neil, thank you for showing us the Lloyd-Hartnett, a very rare and unique car. If you guys want to check this car out, well worth having a look at it. And Neil will be able to tell you a little bit more about its history if you turn up to the Trafalgar Motor Museum. Neil, thanks very much. It's been great. Good on you, mate.